Hi, everyone. Welcome to the NACM session titled Communication is Key, Improving the Jurors' Service Experience. I'm today's session moderator, John Arnson. I'm a Senior Account Executive at Tyler Technologies and also the Resident Jury Management Solutions Expert. I was the Vice President of Client Services at Courthouse Technologies for the last 13 years. Prior to Tyler Technologies purchasing our firm in the fall of 2019. And so jury management has really been part of my life for the last 30 years. With me today are three court executives from two, originally three. Unfortunately, one of them could not make it. But from three different sized courts, all three of the courts, I've known the people there for over 10 years. They've been great customers that I can rely on heavily for their feedback and their court knowledge, especially in jury management. Most importantly, though, I'd say these are people that have shown a great proclivity for utilizing new jury technology to help their jury operation and, of course, their jurors. So first I have with me is Paula Morales. She began her career in Tarrant County, Texas 30 years ago. After graduating from Texas Christian University with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. She started as a jury services clerk and then became a probation officer and was given the opportunity to work inside the courtroom and gain a better understanding of the criminal court proceedings. She's been the Tarrant County Jury Services or Jury Bailiff Administrator since 2004. Which is about almost the time when I met her, and she has since accomplished many things in her role, including bringing Tarrant County to online jury services, seamlessly upgrading their legacy system to their current web-based application, and most importantly, implementing online panel assignments that have saved Tarrant County more than $1 million to this date. The second person is not with us today, John Anderson. Orleans Parish District Court, the Civil Court. He's been there for 10 years as the Technology Director, where he's been instrumental in keeping the court active and online during Hurricane Katrina and obviously hurricanes afterwards. He moved the courts to e-filing and many other automated processes that were once manual. And I can attest to that for the jury operation. He moved to the Civil Court of Orleans Parish to assist in a massive data recovery effort after a large database crash of a loss of over 250,000 records. He has since spearheaded the e-filing, documents online, and implementation of video in the courtrooms, as well, of course, as the automated jury management system. So obviously we have three people that know jury management and know the courts extremely well. Before I go any further, I also want to put out to everybody who's watching today that if you have any questions during this presentation, please use the chat feature located about halfway down the viewing page. It's on the right side. And don't worry, the video window will follow the scroll so you can still view the presentation as you scroll down and ask the questions. We'll get to those questions at the end of the day or the session. So why are we here? We're here to talk about one of the most important parts of the criminal justice system, jury management. More specifically, because any jury operation is really the most public part of a court's operations, we wanted to get some insight on how to best communicate with the public about their jury service. And with really everything going on right now, as we all know, this topic is really as important as ever. The jury operation is in a unique position because, as I said, it's a core function of the court, but it's also one of the only functions that requires a large assembly of the public in order to operate. And again, as we're going through what we're going through, assembling large groups of people right now is a really daunting task. So that's why it's so important on how we communicate with the public. If we're going to be efficient and cost effective, it's extreme. I couldn't think of a more important thing. Even more so now with the pandemic. And as the title of this session would indicate, good communication is key to providing the public with critical information in a timely way so that they feel informed and, most importantly, safe. So with that in mind, let's find out from the experts on how we can do this. I'm going to ask them some questions, and they're going to be able to provide some of the feedback about how they've been able to handle this pandemic and how they've been communicating with jurors. So I'm going to start with Paula and then Peter after that. Paula, maybe you can tell me, in what way has the ability to communicate with jurors via email, text, or even phone call been able to make your jury operation more efficient?
So for us, we use all three of those vehicles, the emails, text, and phone calls. Obviously, if we want to get out more information, the email is really important. So what we do is we actually send text messages and automated voicemails to tell them that they have an email. Now, if it's something that's short, like maybe we've had a change in time or a place, we'll send we'll send a text message just to tell them, hey, this is something short, quick, something easy you need to know. But if it's long, we have to use the emails. And our people love it. It's easier for me to provide all that information. I can have one employee send out the information versus 4 employees jumping on the phone and making phone calls. So for us, all three are really important.
Oh, okay. And Peter, how about you?
I think for us, we've used all three as well, but the text messages seem to be more useful in that if we have a hurricane event and the population starts to scatter, on a lot of cases they don't have access to email. They do text messages. And after Katrina, we learned that text messaging seemed to be the way to go because everything else failed to work. And the public, they like it. The fact that they don't have to call in, that they're going to get a message. We also post the information on our websites as well, and we can direct them to the websites to get information. So text messages are really our way to go. And in the COVID world, we're open, we're closed, we're open, we're closed, and trying to get juries in. And we are doing jury trials right now. The text messages have been invaluable.
Great. And in talking to John, I'm going to relay some of the notes he sent me from Okaloosa. He has been using email and texting, even prior to the pandemic to really keep, as many people from showing up as possible. And that's really, saving them money. And text has been really invaluable for that. I guess that would then lead to my next question is, I guess we can all agree that would we all say that text messaging is really the best way to communicate with the juror?
Absolutely.
And why do you think that is?
Well, kind of like what Peter said, for us, it's short and it's direct, it's quick. They get it really fast. So that kind of takes the problem of having to wait on an email or if it's going to actually go through. They get it so quickly that it just happens instantaneously. So
it's the critical nature of the jury operation, that text, because it's immediate, you feel like you get more response from that?
I do think so. For us, if we have a cancellation, we can actually catch them in the parking lot before they even make it to the security door. So
oh, wow.
it's that quickly. And honestly, I would say the public loves it because they don't have to walk through security, get in an elevator, go upstairs to the courtroom. It's even before they leave their car. So some people might be irritated that they had to drive downtown, but not having to go into the building overrides all of that.
And would you say, Peter, that you've had a similar type of experience?
Oh, absolutely. In the civil court, we've had attorneys settle cases as we're walking the jurors into the courtroom. So the same thing, the ability to be able to stop them from coming almost instantaneously if the case settles has been. The public really appreciates it because if they in the past, they come in here. They go through the process, we sit them down, and then 5 minutes later we get them up and say, okay, everybody can leave. They settled an hour ago. And you get the automatic, why didn't you tell us an hour ago?
Right.
In this scenario, they know the moment it happens.
So you're really cutting down on wasting their time then, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. And so I guess that leads to a kind of a follow-up question, Peter. And then Paula, can you provide some details on how communicating with jurors like this has maybe brought, those things that you're mentioning, I would say are kind of expected benefits. Has there been any unexpected benefits that people might not realize?
I mean, the public jury duty has always been viewed as, one of those things you got to do. But by being able to communicate directly and quickly with them, they're not quite so, I got to be here. And in a lot of cases, we can stop them from being here. And even more so, we save a number of jurors that we actually bring in the building. So in the past, if we brought them into the building and we checked them in, well, now we can't use them again for another, 2, 3, 4 years, however many years it is for a jurisdiction. Okay. And in this case, we've stopped them before they ever got here or ever left their houses. So we can then get them back into the pools, and it expands the amount of time between jury service, which of course makes them happy.
So better utilization has come out of this as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, great. And Paula, what about you? Have you seen anything unexpected come from being able to communicate more frequently?
So for me, I feel like I have a better juror. We're able to keep them more informed. They don't have to wonder why they showed up to the courtroom and everything canceled. If we can tell them ahead of time, oh, the defendant took a plea or something like that, or if we have problems and we have to maybe push them back an hour or two, we can manage their expectations. And I just think it shows that we're respectful of their time, and we're not just, they all have a bad idea of once they show up and everything cancels, why didn't you tell me before? So now this time we do tell them, and they're like, we're more respectful of their time, and I think that they appreciate that. So I think I get a better juror overall.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on it. It makes sense, right? The more you communicate, I think the more, they don't feel like they're in the dark. They're, more educated on what's required of them, what's going on with them. John Anderson, when I asked him about this, he voiced very similar things, especially Paula, your point of a better juror, if you want to, in the sense that they're more, they're more in the know. They don't feel like they're being left in the wind. And as a result of that, the people that show up are kind of ready to go, get it done, and really being able to call people off. I know Texas and Florida especially have different rates from day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. So the fewer dates that you can keep them from walking through the door, the less that you pay. And so John has also been able to save a lot of money as a result of that. So next question, how, and I guess this is kind of following on, a lot of these questions are going to be kind of flowing from each other. So how, Peter, how do you think being able to communicate with jurors has allowed you to adapt to the constant changes going on? So I guess this is kind of similar to what we've already been talking about, but has the instantaneousness of communication been able allow you, not the jurors, but allow you to adapt?
Oh, absolutely. And particularly with what's going on in the world today, I can't even imagine trying to communicate with these jurors in the COVID world, particularly with the way we bring them in now. It's very, we only bring in something at a time, and we don't want, more than 30 people at a time in the building, and I can't even. We wouldn't be able to do it. I frankly don't think we'd be able to accomplish that without the ability to communicate with them instantaneously.
Right. And Paula, what about you? I know you're different from Peter. You're larger court, but with more locations. How have you been able to adapt with the ability to communicate?
Well, what's been great for us is we're able to assess what's going on in different places and then adapt our procedures. And we can, like we've said it all along, instantaneously. The judges can tell me one thing, I can send out the information immediately, and if that changes, have them expect to hear something else. I mean, even if we don't know, a text that says, hold tight, we'll be with you in 2 hours, it means a whole lot to the juror, and my staff doesn't have to field phone calls coming in, people walking in not knowing what's going on. So for us, the email and the text both work because we can send the text saying, hey, we have more information, go read your email.
Oh, fantastic. And And John, in Okaloosa, one of the things that he was really discussing about his ability to adapt, they have 2 locations in Okaloosa County, and he, has been able to talk about being able to move people from one location to another, doing that in a way that was not possible before. And then obviously with the pandemic, being able to alter reporting times at a moment's notice to keep, social distancing measures, staggering reporting times, that sort of thing, has been able to help him as well. So I guess this then, a lot of times the jury operation comes down to the bottom line here. Has communicating with jurors, Paula, been able to help your court save money? Now, I mentioned that at the beginning, but $1 million since you've done something called online panel assignment. But can you be a little more detailed on how you're able to save the money?
Oh, absolutely. What's so great for us is when, from the very moment my jurors get their summons, they have a choice. They can decide if they want to report to the room just like usual and go through the regular processes. Maybe they don't like to do anything that has to do with the computer, or they can log on, do a qualification questionnaire. Once I know they're qualified, we make online panel assignments, so they get an email that tells them what court to report to, what time they're supposed to be there, where it's located. We follow up with a text message and an IVR automated phone call that says, go check your emails. And then if that case was to cancel, they would get an email that says, don't show up at all. And, the text message comes first, and then the text message says, if you want more information, go read your email. But initially, all of that works into it. So it's given my courts a better deadline, because they're like, okay, we have jurors coming at this time. I have at least, half an hour before the plea, before they're going to come into the building. So it's really helped the courts. They've really been on board with it. And I will tell you, I am proud. It has been $1 million over the course of this time. But even just last year alone, we saved $170,000. So when the taxpayers hear that, they're like, oh, thank you for saving my money.
Wow.
But honestly, and that works for the courts. But honestly, the jurors is all about respecting their time and the convenience to them. That's kind of the bottom line, because those are the people that really make the difference.
So I guess my follow-up to that is I've had this discussion before with others, and a lot of times they're worried that by calling the jurors off, they kind of want to get paid. So you're saying that many of them would prefer to be told to not show up at all and not get paid, and rather than show up just to get paid and then not be used.
Oh, absolutely. So in my county, we're the ones that have a first day pay. Our first day pay is $6. It's not really worth it to them. We have free parking, but you have to get on a shuttle. So it's not really worth it for them to go through all of that trouble for $6. Now, if they have to come back a second day, like if they're picked as an actual juror, it's a $40 day. So you can understand, prior to having online assignments, some of my criminal courts would do a 2-day voir dire. So voir dire would start at $46. Well, now everybody's voir dire starts at $6. So even if we go to trial, it's huge savings.
Oh, wow, that's great. And Peter, have you been able to see any savings, from being able to communicate and allowing people online access and that sort of thing?
We really have. Because we're in the same situation where, we have to bring them in. If we don't bring them in, we don't have to pay them. We have to pay for parking here, so we don't have the free parking, and we pay to feed them. So
oh wow, okay.
Yes, we're talking about a substantial amount of money to bring somebody in. The food bill alone in New Orleans could kill you. But that alone is
that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and then we've seen some savings, particularly in the mailings. I don't want to say that the New Orleans population is a bit nomadic, but it is to some degree still because of Katrina. We still have folks that are rebuilding or coming back, or they didn't come back. So we had a substantial amount of mail bounces, and we took that by 37%.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that's been huge for us. That's been a real cost savings.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so and as far as what John has advised me in Okaloosa, Florida has a unique instance where many jurors don't get paid at all for the first 3 days, especially if if their employer pays for it. They only get that first 3 days, which is $15 a day, if they can show that they are self-employed or not employed, or they work for a small business. I know the rules are a little bit more specific than that. And then it goes to $30 on the fourth day. So I know John has advised me by being able to keep people home, very much in a similar fashion to Peter and Paula, that, if you can make something that would look like a 4 or 5 day trial down to a 2 or a 3 day trial, you're cutting down a lot on the amount that ultimately the court will be paying out in jury fees. But also the juror, being able to stay home and not get paid. And in Peter's instance, similar, if they don't show up, then, they haven't, they could serve later on. John's a little bit of a smaller court, so they have a little bit more of an on-call process. And so being on call and communicating go hand in hand in saving money. Next question. So now we're switching a little bit. Now it's kind of more pandemic specific here. But so given everything that's going on and really not knowing how it will all eventually play out, how has being able to communicate through all of these means of methods of communication to the jurors, how has it helped you during the pandemic? Paula.
So for us, it's the communication, being able to reach them at a moment's notice. We've had jurors scheduled, because we've been able to postpone from earlier in the year. So we can contact them by text message to let them know if they're on hold or if they're completely canceled altogether. We've even been able to set up a Zoom meeting with our jurors that we're having to go through grand jury process. And the communication is key. We've been able to set up the testing Zoom, and then when the judge is present, the full Zoom. So there was no hiccups along the way. When it was ready to go, everybody was present. So all of those communication has helped us. I don't think anybody's ever complained about getting too much information, especially from a government office. So I think that part's really, really essential for us.
Yeah, it's usually not enough info, right?
Right.
That they're complaining about. How about you, Peter? How is being able to communicate help during the pandemic? I think you mentioned something about being able to keep them outside and stuff. I mean, I'll let you tell me about what's going on there.
Yeah. Again, communication's been key, and the fact that we can do it almost instantaneous has really been beneficial to trying to maintain social distancing. And of course, the court is trying to minimize foot traffic in the building as much as they can. So the ability to be able to bring jurors in blocks or tell them that the case is settled, don't bother coming, has been huge. And again, I don't frankly think we would be able to seat a jury or to even get them in the building and comply with the CDC requirements for social distancing without the ability to communicate that in that manner.
And so you think that this is really, have you had any, and so I guess my follow-up question is how this is, I'm assuming, is also in the service of helping the public, keeping them safe. Have they been discussing or brought to your attention that the ability to communicate like this is, makes them feel a little bit more at ease?
Oh, absolutely. Because the first thing, you mentioned jury duty, and of course, in the COVID era, everybody says, I can't come because, we're all going to be sitting elbow to elbow in a jury box. Well, that's not the case. We've been able to put out a considerable amount of information through email, text messaging, and even through U.S. mail to keep the potential jurors advised as to what's going on, and been able to post information on websites and text that information or the links to them so that they can get. So we've tried to saturate them with information.
Never too much info, right?
No. And you said it before, there's never too much from a government agency. To saturate them with information so that they feel like they're more in control of what's going on.
Yeah. John Anderson in Okaloosa voiced very similar, basically kind of feedback when he mentioned that while he is texting people and when they come in, they have felt more at ease, mainly because they've been able to communicate kind of all the protocols and all the, one of the great things that a lot of jurors won't see on the summons is what the court has actually done in service of keeping them safe during this pandemic. You don't get to, here's an extra page and a half of all the stuff that we've done, but they do get to use the email and the text to convey that information. We're keeping the seats 6 feet apart. Here's what we've done in the jury boxes. So they've been also using the communication to convey the things that they've done, like physical things that they've done to keep the jurors safe as well. So, the communication is not just about their information about when they need to come, but also reassuring the public that it's safe, that the court is doing everything in its power to make sure that, as Peter mentioned, following the CDC guidelines, keeping social distancing, staggering reporting times, hand washing, sanitizing, all that stuff. So John said he's used the communication for that purpose. So that's great to hear. I know if I was a juror, the more information I got about what the court was doing to keep me safe, the more at ease I would to, show up for service. Okay, so Paula, so how has being able to communicate with jurors via text message changed the way that you administer jury duty, like staffing, timing? How is being able to communicate in these immediate ways that we've been discussing, how has it actually physically changed the way that you administer the jury operation?
So for us, it saved us a ton of time, a ton of money, but being able to utilize my staff in different ways has been better. Normally, we would have to get on the phone and make phone calls to the whole entire panel that could just take hours. Now with the texting, it's just the fastest way to notify them. It helps me get employees more tasks to one thing each instead of everybody having to jump on board with one task.
Okay, great. And Peter?
I would have to echo what Paula said almost exactly word for word. The same thing, the ability to one person could send a text out to entire pools or panels, and that takes, a matter of minutes versus in the past it was phone calls, or you even would have to station somebody at the entrances of the courthouse to stop jurors or turn them around or point them in a different direction. So it's a huge cost saver, and it allows us to point employees to work on different things.
So John Anderson, similar, kind of more specifically, the things that he's brought to my attention is a lot of times the jury operation takes people from other departments, mainly because they're only needed for, small windows, check-in, stuff like that, where there's a mass amount of people coming in or having to communicate. And I found it interesting that John had really talked about the one area that he's been able to save is not necessarily in jury staff, is as much as he doesn't have to take people from those other departments and bring them in and utilize them and be like, okay, we're done, go back to whatever job you were doing before. So it's more that his staff is able, his full-time staff are able to do everything that he's hoping for without having to bring in kind of additional help from outside sources. So it looks like it kind of, being able to communicate is kind of universally able to kind of keep the staff from being too much to get the same job done. So kind of last kind of major question here is, what other kind of cost savings measures have you been able to, get from being able to communicate with jurors? So besides the simple, less jury fees, and Peter, of course, your food bill has come down. Have you seen, other things like overtime hours or anything like that where you've been able to save some additional money, summonses sent out, yield, stuff like that?
Across the board, we've seen a cost savings with the yield from sending out the summonses to staffing. There were occasions where jury staff would have to come in on a Sunday if something settled in the day that where we didn't have this instantaneous communication ability. So then you have overtime and you have unhappy employees because you're calling them Sunday morning saying, "Oh, by the way, the football game you were going to watch today, you're not going to watch."
In New Orleans,
so
I can see why that would be a problem.
Football down here is almost like going to church. So there's been a huge cost savings there, and then of course when you take a task that typically takes 4 hours and you minimize it to 5 minutes, now these employees are free to do other things, or that task that took 4 hours, you may have to bring employees from other offices to help. You don't have to do that anymore, so they can stay focused on the task that they have at hand. It's been a cost savings. It's been easier on staff, and it is so much easier on the public and potential jurors, which is really the most important thing, because if they feel like they're in control, then they feel a whole lot better about jury duty.
Makes sense. Paula, how about you?
So for us, we have a process with our summons that we don't print the summons unless it's a good address that it's being mailed to. So with that, we're able to not mail out summons to bad addresses. And at the same time, our process allows us to change the summons on the fly. So being able, like with what's going on right now, we were able to put a notification on there about COVID-19. Normally, we would have had to go through a whole process with purchasing and have to request information for a whole new summons. We were able to do it in just a few days. So that was key for us.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny. We've been talking about texting and emailing and phone calling, but we forget lots of times that the initial communication is in fact the summons itself. And that how, you're able to mail the summons to accurate addresses, how you're able to convey information, make changes. I think all those things in that initial mailing is really the setup for everything going forward. John in Okaloosa has said several times to me over our long history together that being able to check addresses, then further to that, collecting the contact information, because the summons design tells them that we need their contact information, and that, in fact, in Okaloosa, they don't have a questionnaire on their summons anymore. They only do online response, which is interesting given that they're not, you'd think something like that would be for a high volume, urban court. But he's about an hour east of Pensacola, so not, they're sending out maybe 10, 15,000 summonses a year, but they don't accept a paper questionnaire back in the mail anymore, and they do everything completely remote, online, or through kiosks when jurors show up for service. So all of these methods have sped up the jury process, the kiosks, and all that stuff. Like we mentioned earlier, you don't need as many staff in order to get everybody checked in. And so as a result of that, he's been able to really streamline his jury process, through all of these different means. But it all starts from the summons. So I find that really interesting, that a lot of times the summons is kind of forgotten as a method of communication. So those are all my questions, but there are some questions I think that come from the public here. One question that is asked is, are you advising jurors that they may incur text charges from their provider should they choose to receive texts? Is that something that you convey?
We do.
We have a statement on ours as well.
Okay. Yeah, and John said as well, there's on the online component, there's also a terms and conditions as you put in your phone number, saying that there are charges that may apply as well. So great question. That totally makes sense. I know that it's a question, from the sales side, I get asked quite frequently. Text, and data plans cost. You don't necessarily want to put all those additional charges on the juror. But from what John has told me, and even having discussions with Paula and Peter, that they'd gladly pay the 3 cents if they get called off from having to serve jury duty to receive that text. So at least the majority of them do. Another question. I know this is going to sound a little oddly self-serving, but it is not my question. What company did you go with in order to implement all this stuff? Seems kind of funny given that we've all known each other for so long. So I don't want to be too self-promoting, but I'll let you guys advise what system you use.
Well, I use Tyler Technology, formerly Courthouse. I was Courthouse Technology girl, and now I'm Tyler girl.
We were Courthouse, and now we're Tyler.
Yeah. And John is the same. As I said at the beginning, I've known actually all three of these great people for a decade or longer. There's a reason why they're here. They're, the best clients I could ask for. So they are fantastic. And yeah, that's the system that they use, and it provides all those abilities that they have. A couple of other questions. Here's an interesting one. Has there been anything that you've tried during this pandemic, communication or otherwise, that really kind of fell flat or didn't work in the way that you hoped?
Oh.
I know, right? I saw that one. I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting one.
I'll tell you, and I'm sorry to say that it's completely opposite. We actually had a trial last month that we had to send the jurors to a completely different location. It wasn't a court. It was just one of our buildings far away from downtown. It was a large panel, but it was the only place that we could find that was social distance. Everybody was a panel of 84 people, and the jurors were set for one day. So the Friday before, they got their email, you're going to go to this one place. Well, then come to find out, they had to do COVID testing on the defendant, so they got changed to another date, and then they had another setback. And so they actually, instead of coming on Monday, they came in on a Wednesday. So everybody showed up on the right day, which is really good. And then we were able to tell them through the text messaging, stay in your car so that way you don't get too hot, keep the air conditioner going, and then come up as you see the line go down. So all those little bits of communication, that worked out far better than we ever anticipated. We figured out of 84 people, we're going to lose a few, there's going to be some problems. We never had any problem, and everybody had a temperature that allowed them to enter the building. And they were told they would have face masks, and here's your shield, face shields, all of that happened. The judge was a visiting judge from out of our county. He was amazed. He was like, I never thought this was going to go off without a hitch, and it certainly did.
Oh, that's great. And Peter, how about you?
Ironically, we had a trial last month that we couldn't do in the courthouse. It was a big trial, and we used a ballroom in the hotel across the street, and the same thing. The ability to be able to communicate with them through text messaging and email made it easier for us to move the jurors around. Equally as ironic is that we stopped that trial the Sunday night before it was supposed to start because we had two hurricanes on our way. So we had to, again, communicate virtually on the fly to the potential jurors to tell them to follow what the local leaders are saying about evacuations and staying safe for the storm. So
it's not one thing, it's another, right, Peter?
Never ends.
Okay, last question I have here. Is there any other additional tips on how to get through to more people? So I know that you're using texting and phone calling, but is there anything in those messages that you feel kind of resonates more with people more than maybe some other messages?
I would say, sorry,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for us, I have learned less is more. I'm the type of person who wants to give as much information as possible because I want you to be more informed than anything. But I have learned less is more because the more you give them, some people read it differently. They just don't understand. So just if you can give them the tiny little bit and then follow up, it works so much better for us.
So like too much info causes too many questions, kind of like that?
Absolutely.
So be specific with the communication, and you can, from my, again, I know the function that you're using, the ability, the fact that you can do so, you don't have to put it all into one message. It can be staggered, or it can be done as people need it. So I think it's important to kind of stick to key messages and try not to drown the juror in too much info. How about you, Peter?
Yeah, pretty much the same. You give folks too much information, they one person reads it, gets a completely different interpretation, and all that to generate phone calls. So we try to give them exactly what they need, and if they want more, we put links in for the websites where we will publish more detailed information if they want to read it. And of course, we use the software itself to send messages out through it. with information and can direct them back to the e-juror system online.
Just so you know, everybody, we just got a message saying, yes, less is more is a great reminder. So apparently other people are agreeing with us there that the less is more when it comes to providing jurors with information. So thank you for that comment. I won't call you out specifically, but I appreciate that. I don't really have any other questions. Is there anything, Peter or Paula, that that we haven't touched on that you'd like to say before we conclude today?
I would say, just as a reminder, I know we've talked a lot about the emails, about text messaging, but emails really are important as well. Even if people are getting deferred or excused, postponed, the thing I like about the emails is jurors can answer back really quickly, so that if something isn't clear, I'm able to look at it and see if maybe somebody has a typo or how I can change it to send out the next message. And if they like something or if they don't like something, they will tell you really quickly, and you don't have to wonder, well, when did this happen? It's pretty instantaneously as well. So I like that part of it as well.
And Peter?
Yeah, I agree. We use email as much as we use text messaging. And what we have discovered is a lot of people just don't want to use the phone. They would rather communicate via email or via text messaging. And you can get a little more detailed in an email than you can in a text message. Obviously, It's a limitation by character.
Yeah, that makes sense. To me, I've always looked at it as casting a wide net as possible, rather than using one instead of another. I think if you can use multiple means of communication, you're really covering all your bases. As Peter said, there's some people that don't have a mobile phone or don't like texting or receiving text, then email seems to be better. If email and texting are, outbound phone calls are an additional great way of talking to the juror. And then I think Paula and Peter both, bring up something very important, which is I think the type of message really dictates the type of communication that you're going to use. Short, specific, in the moment information, texting seems to make the most sense. But where you're providing a bit more exposition, a little bit more detail, then an email seems to make more sense in that moment. So, try to use as many communication types as you can, because, I always joke everything but carrier pigeon is possible. So if you can do that, I think that inevitably the more you communicate with the public through all these multiple means and you use the right forms of communication, I think you're going to get the most out of it. At this point, I guess we have one final slide to show up. If you guys have any questions of what you've seen here today, please, reach out to us. Tyler Technologies, you can go to the booth afterwards. We talk about improving juror communication. We're talking about, hosting hearings virtually, backlog prevention, empowering defendants, leveraging the cloud. These are all things that you're going to see at the virtual booth. And as far as specific related to jury management, you can certainly reach out to me. As I said, I'm the jury, subject matter expert at Tyler Technologies. And if you'd like to speak to Peter, John Anderson, or Paula, you can either reach out to me, or if you have their information, you can reach out to them directly as well. So I wanted to thank everybody here for, showing up today and listening to what we have to say. I especially want to thank Peter and Paula. I want to thank the folks at NACM for setting this up as well. And so I hope to speak to you all about jury management more and more. It is a crucial part of the court's operations. As I said, it has a unique challenge during this pandemic that I don't think anybody else in any other department has, the same issues that they need to address. And so we've learned that being able to communicate through all these means is really the best way in order to achieve that. So thank you again for your time. I look forward to hearing all of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.